The dawn of a new season of Futurama is coming to Hulu July 29th.
That's great.
But I have to warn you, it's completely brilliant.
The interplanetary hit is back.
The very survival of Earth is at stake. Is everybody okay? Is anybody hurt?
Nobody's okay. Everybody's hurt.
Watch the all-new season of Futurama.
That's the best damn show I ever saw.
July 29th, streaming only on Hulu.
Cam found out that group chats between different phones aren't private.
Or encrypted, thank you. We only text in code.
Yes, which I created. I created a code.
Yes. Which can be a little annoying.
Wait, was that your attempt at the code?
You already forgot the code, didn't you?
I should have written it down.
The place to safely send messages between different devices. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Hear that? That's what cooked when you order juicy beef sounds like. The steaming hug of 2 slices of melted cheese, the crunch of tangy pickles and sliced onions, all topped with a toasted sesame seed bun. That's the sound of a Quarter Pounder with cheese.
Fresh beef at participating U.S. McDonald's. Excludes Alaska, Hawaii, and U.S. territories.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Eflin, joined by Bob Phelan. Nick Stevens is not with us on this episode, but we are here to break down the Austin Hays trade as the Orioles send the outfielder to the Philadelphia Phillies in exchange for reliever Seranthony Dominguez, along with outfielder Christian Pache. And as I mentioned, we are bringing you an emergency podcast in light of the trade between the Orioles and the Phillies. The Orioles help out their bullpen a little bit by acquiring Seranthony Dominguez in the deal. While Dominguez is not having what is statistically his best season to this point in the major leagues, his stuff still plays really well out of the bullpen, good strikeout numbers, and does fill a little bit of a need in the Orioles bullpen, which is for another swing and miss reliever to help get the ball to Craig Kimbrell. Meanwhile, they also pick up Christian Pache, who could fill in some sort of role in the outfield. Pache has not been much of a hitter to this point in his major league career, just a 243 career average to go, with a pretty small 515 OPS across 213 major league games in 5 seasons. But the glove work is good. It's helped him stick around the majors. And if the Orioles want to use him as a late-inning defensive replacement, that would be a good role for him. So I'll bring in Bob now to help me break this down. What are your thoughts on the deal? Because on one hand, the Orioles send out one of their veterans, a guy who's been with the organization for a long time, was there through the rebuild, and last year was an all-star, to help bolster what was a clear weakness on this roster.
Anytime you can get rid of a veteran who I've been trying to trade for 2 years running and improve the bullpen without giving up a prospect, you got to love it. I see nothing to not like about this trade. I mean, Hays has been playing much better of late, especially the last 2 months. I think he's got like a OPS in the mid 800s, somewhere around there, mostly playing against left-handed pitching, not playing every day, but he's due to get hurt any day. Sure, he wasn't happy. There are some reports that maybe he was causing a little bit of distress in the clubhouse. Take those with a grain of salt, but I'm sure he wasn't happy with the limited playing time coming off an all-star season. Was probably a non-tender candidate in the offseason anyway, as he was probably going to make about $8 million if you were tendering him a contract in his final arbitration year. You get him out of the way, and now Cowser can play left field every day or between left and center. Kjerstad, there's more room for him to play. Connor Norby, he's been more of a corner outfielder in AAA, so maybe he's the immediate Hays replacement. Maybe there's room for him to stick around long term, or if you want to move Jordan Westberg to left field next year, it just opens up the options for the young, talented players. Not to mention, you're getting a guy in Seranthony Dominguez who has really good stuff, the best fastball velocity on the team immediately, probably the best stuff overall immediately in the bullpen, maybe not the team, but in the bullpen. His stuff plus is over 100 with 4 of his pitches. His expected ERA, he's got a 4.75 ERA on the season, but since May 1st, it's like 2.81 with a 1.01 whip. His expected ERA is 3.25, which is better than the great year he had in 2022. Yeah, I'm thrilled with it. He's got an $8 million team option. So if you get more out of him and you want to bring him back next year for $8 million to set up Felix Bautista. Not a bad option as well. And then Pache, yeah, he can't really hit well, but he does hit much better against left-handed pitching. So I think it's OPS approaching 700 against lefties, can play great defense at all three outfield spots. So maybe he starts in center against lefties with Cowser in left and could be a great late inning defensive replacement.
Yeah, I was surprised by this move just because I figured that they would keep Hayes on the roster for the rest of the year. But the more I think about this trade, it makes sense on multiple levels. I agree with you. I don't think Hayes would have made it through the offseason with the Orioles. I think that they were going to non-tender him, or they were going to see if they could get something in return this offseason. And I don't think that they would have gotten this good of a package if they had held on to Hayes for the rest of the year and then tried to move him with a year of team control left and a rising arbitration figure coming up. So they get a good return for him now, get that move out of the way, which was kind of inevitable, and they help shore up what is one of the weak spots on this roster. And with Dominguez, that's a good point about his monthly splits and how he's gotten better over the course of the season, especially since May. What's interesting, even if you look at his ERA and think, well, that's up a little bit, his strikeout numbers are way up from where they were a year ago, and his walks are down. So you really have to like that. And when you look on his Baseball Savant page, there's a lot of good metrics in the red. The hard hit in the 90th percentile, which is excellent. Breaking run value in 83rd percentile. Fastball velocity, 95th percentile, averaging 97.6. And this has been an issue for the Orioles over the course of this year, is that they don't really have a pitcher who can rack up strikeouts. You don't have that guy that has the swing and miss stuff in high leverage spots this season, other than Craig Kimbrell. And we know a lot about Kimbrell's volatility, but Yennier Cano does certain things well. He's not a strikeout pitcher. And I think that the need for a strikeout pitcher has been apparent at a lot of points this season, and Dominguez gives them that.
Yeah, it's a great point, especially extra inning games. You start with the runner on second, or if you inherit some runners, you need a guy that can strike guys out and is not going to, need to rely on soft contact or what have you to get the job done. That was the great thing about Felix Bautista last year, is that he could do those 2-inning saves/wins where in extras he comes in, strikes a batter out, or 2 or 3, or whatever, and then you don't give up the run. And obviously we saw that Ciano Perez was able to do that on Thursday with the game on the line and an excruciating win that we needed against the Marlins. But yeah, completely agree. I also think it's interesting that this trade, Brave style, was announced by the Orioles on Twitter. Like, there was no smoke at all, just immediate, boom, trade's done, here's what it was. This front office keeps things close to the vest, and that's why nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows who we're after. So yeah, just makes for an exciting / stressful next few days here over the weekend as we head to the trade deadline.
Yeah, this is the kind of deal that I don't think we're really used to seeing anymore, especially with the Orioles, because so many trades in baseball now are driven by the prospects, and veterans who are rentals around this time of year. Look at the Randy Arozarena trade. Although Arozarena is not a rental, the Rays are clearly in sell mode. They get prospects back from the Mariners. That's a typical deadline deal, but that's not what we saw here. And we now have some breaking news, but I'll let Bob slip it in real quick. We'll probably break it down on a separate episode here. But Bob, you want to give this to our listeners?
Yeah, as we're recording this, the Orioles have acquired Zack Efflin, starting pitcher from the Tampa Bay Rays, for 3 prospects in return. Don't have the details just yet, or at least I haven't seen them. So obviously once we get more information, we can dive deeper into that. But hey, the Orioles or Mike Elias and company are recognizing the needs of the team, and they're striking while the iron's hot. And we still have 3-4 days to make some more. So yeah, gotta like getting a guy like that, depending on the return. But I think Eflin is under control next year as well. I'd have to, do a little more investigating, but a move to like, at least on surface level, with the news just coming out.
So it's interesting that the Orioles make 2 big deals 4 days before the deadline. It definitely seems like they are jumping the market a little bit. Do you think that the market as a whole is going to move faster this year, or do you think the Orioles are trying to avoid what they had last year, which was that last-minute crunch coming down the wire, and they pick up Jack Flaherty.
Yeah, a little deja vu, you think, is in the making here. Luckily, Flaherty seems to be much better this time around. I think I saw something where the Orioles are not opposed to reacquiring Flaherty this trade deadline, and they kind of suspected that he could not be the guy they needed at the end of last year, but they felt like they had to do something just because he was coming off of injury the year before and was a bunch of innings over the previous year. So I could see it happening. I wouldn't be too upset. But yeah, Zack Efflin, if you can add another starter, then you got Albert Suarez and someone like Chase McDermott. You can move to the bullpen down the stretch. That improves both ends of your pitching staff.
Before we wrap up this episode, and we may have another one here from the corner with the Zack Eflin deal, depending on the timing of these details coming out, any final thoughts about Austin Hays' tenure as an Oriole? And you're right, Bob. You have been talking about trading Hays, I think, for 2 years straight. But still a player that I think we're going to remember from this time in team history. Injured a lot. Definitely, I think, set back by the wall, moving back a few years ago. But a player who certainly had his moments, was an all-star, drafted during the Duquette years, developed into a decent major leaguer during that time, and then the Mike Elias years. Now it's over. So your thoughts on the Austin Hays era?
Yeah, look, I mean, he was a really solid prospect for the Orioles coming up, and he made it work at the major. He's had a major league career. He should have plenty of pride in his Orioles tenure. And yeah, I mean, frustrating when he would try to play through injury, but at the same time, that shows he cared. You know, he was trying. He was a grinder. He wanted to be out there helping the team. Sometimes that can backfire in some way, but yeah, I mean, hats off to him. Good luck in Philly. Hopefully we see him in the World Series, and then we beat him, and he'll get a ring anyway.
Well, Bob, I'll just say this. I will no longer refer to you as the Austin Hays of the podcast when you podcast with a back injury or when you're sick, because Austin Hays isn't an Oriole anymore, so it's not relevant. Are you happy about that?
Never been happier in my life.
Well, that does it for this emergency podcast edition of Orioles on the Verge. We will probably be back between now and our regular show time on Monday night. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, oriolesontheverge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, sign up for our Patreon community, which you can join as a paying member for as little as $3 a month. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to our Orioles.
We all know about the speed of sound, but have you ever thought about the sounds of speeding? If you drive over the speed limit, there are lots of different sounds that you might hear. Drive too fast, and you could hear the sound of your vehicle crashing, the sound of ambulances and first responders desperately trying to free you from the wreckage. You could hear the beeps of a heart monitor. You could hear doctors and nurses in an emergency room as you're being treated for your injuries. You could hear the sound of worried family members in the hospital waiting room, hoping to hear that you're okay. You could even hear the sound of people crying at a funeral. Because if you drive over the speed limit, whether by a lot or by a little, you can do damage that's beyond repair. You could seriously injure yourself, or worse, you could hurt and even kill someone else. When you speed, you put everyone on the road in danger. One way or another, speeding catches up with you. Paid for by NHTSA.
Hear that? That's what cooked when you order juicy beef sounds like. The steaming hug of 2 slices of melted cheese, the crunch of tangy pickles and sliced onions, all topped with a toasted sesame seed bun. That's the sound of a Quarter Pounder with cheese.
Fresh beef at participating U.S. McDonald's. Excludes Alaska, Hawaii, and U.S. territories.
For 25 years, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.
The dawn of a new season of Futurama is coming to Hulu July 29th.
That's great, but I have to warn you, it's completely brilliant.
The interplanetary hit is back.
The very survival of Earth is at stake. Is everybody okay? Is anybody hurt?
Nobody's okay. Everybody's hurt.
Watch the all-new season of Futurama.
That's the best damn show I ever saw.
July 29, streaming only on Hulu.
Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Eflin, joined by Bob Phelan. We are here for an emergency podcast. Our co-host Nick Stevens couldn't join us, but the Orioles have just made a pretty major move with an intra-division rival as they acquire right-handed pitcher Zack Efflin in exchange for prospects Jackson Baumeister, Mac Horvath, and Matthew Etzel. That's per Jeff Passan over at ESPN. So the Orioles give up a right-handed pitcher and two outfielders to acquire Eflin. And Eflin will now step into an Orioles rotation that does need some help. While he's not an ace by any stretch, he does check off a few boxes the Orioles need. However, they are giving up three players that we were pretty high on, and a guy in Baumeister who looks like he was going to be possibly one of the better high upside projects in their pitching development program. So we'll break that down in a moment. But Bob, just real quick, what are your thoughts on this deal as you look at it?
Again, another trade that just comes completely out of the blue. No smoke whatsoever around this trade. I mean, we've seen the Orioles mentioned in the same breath as Jamison Tyon, even Tarek Skubal and Garrett Crochet, although the expenses of those will probably be very high. But yeah, just came out of nowhere, and it's fun. It's fun to be 5 days from the trade deadline, and we've had two trades already today, and we still have so much ammo. If the Orioles really want to go out and continue to improve this team, whether it's pitching or whatever they want to do, buy and sell at the same time, we still have not dipped into our top 10 prospects in the system. So gotta love that. It is, as we love all these prospects and we rank them, we watch them on a nightly basis. It does hurt to see three guys I like a lot and am really high on, and Baumeister, Etzel, and Horvath go. But at the same time, like I was telling you before we started recording, this is what I prefer in the Orioles situation. I want to keep that top four. The Holiday, Mayo, Basayo, Kjerstad, who I guess technically isn't a prospect anymore. I'd love to even keep at least one of Beavers and Fabian, or keep Norby around because I think he could be the new Austin Hayes out there. Chase McDermott. Like, I want to keep some of our best guys. So if we can get stuff done by working in the depth of the system from 11, 12 down, I'm all for it. My initial reaction is I'm happy with this. Eflin is a very consistent guy. He doesn't walk anybody. He's under contract at a reasonable rate, $18 million for next year. All of his expected stats are better than his actual ERA right now, which is 4.09. Expected ERA is 3.37. FIP is 3.65. XFIP 3.77. So yeah, I'm very happy with this trade. Is my initial reaction. Obviously, I reserve the right to change my mind at any point, but I think the Orioles jumped on this early because they think it's as fair as it's going to get. I think the costs are only going to go up as we get closer and closer to the deadline. So why not jump the market? And if they felt like this was pretty fair for the time and place and situation that's going on this trade deadline season, then I got to think it was a good move.
Let's break down Eflin for a moment. Eflin signed a 3-year deal with the Rays before last season, and year one was probably the best year of his major league career to that point. He posted a 3.5 ERA and 177 2/3 innings pitched with 186 strikeouts and just 24 walks. That helped him earn a 6th place finish in Cy Young voting last year. This season, the strikeout numbers have come down closer to his career numbers normally. However, the numbers that Bob just mentioned, the fact that he doesn't walk anybody, induces a lot of soft contact, still consistent here, and coming off a season in which he threw over 170 innings, Eflin continuing to be a little bit of an innings eater this year. So far, 110 innings through 19 starts. So at a minimum, the Orioles acquire a guy who's going to be easily slotted in now as their number 3 starter, who can give them a little bit of length and help keep this bullpen rested as we gear up for the playoffs. If you look at some of his baseball savant metrics, 87th percentile in chase rate, 99th percentile in walk percentage, and the fastball run value comes in at a pretty 79th percentile. That said, this is not a guy who throws hard. Average fastball velocity, 91.9 miles per hour. Not going to get you a ton of strikeouts, but he has a mix of pitches that he uses pretty well, and he can seemingly throw any of them for strikes.
And let's be honest, I think the Orioles run out a pretty good defense every day, so I think that's going to help a guy like him as well. I'm not going to lie, I haven't paid too much attention to the Rays this season. I don't think we've played them that much yet this year, and I'm not sure exactly. I know Jose Siri's a really good outfielder, but I'm not sure, the total depth of their defense and how that's contributed to his numbers. I know it certainly hurt him in Philly when he had that defense behind him, so I think he's going to like the defense the Orioles put behind him. Yeah, he's not going to strike out a ton, although for having the chase numbers that he does in a fastball value, it must have some hop to it. He still struck out over a batter an inning last year. It would be nice to see that kind of tick up back towards that. And maybe I really like what Drew French and the Orioles pitching development has been able to do. And this goes for Seranthony, Dominguez as well. I think there are probably improvements to be made, adjustments to be made to get even more out of them. And I trust this team to be able to do that. So, yeah, I'm a fan of Eflin. Remains to be seen if the prospects going the other way, break out in a big way and help a divisional rival down the line. That'll be interesting to follow. I guess I have to get a Rays jersey or 3 at some point down the line, and at least they have that cool new City Connect. I wouldn't mind having one of those.
So just pulling up, trying to put the defense between the two teams in a little bit more context. Now, this is outs above average. You could probably pick different numbers to go with. The Orioles currently are tied for third in outs above average with the Astros this season at 10. The Rays aren't too far behind them at 7. Jose Siri, their center fielder, is excellent. But so that it shows you that their defense has been generally solid this year, but Eflin does get a little bit better defense in coming to Baltimore. We'll go over now to the prospects that are going in this trade. And Baumeister, as I mentioned at the top, the Orioles deal a guy who seemed like he could be one of the better pitchers to come out of their pitching development program. Drafted out of Florida State last year in the second round. He was pitching at Aberdeen this season, making his professional debut. And while walks were an issue for him, the numbers are generally solid in Aberdeen. 3.06 ERA with 91 strikeouts, over 70 and 2/3 innings pitched. His teammate there, Mac Horvath, overcame a really, really slow start to the season and has heated up at the plate so far. In fact, he departs the Orioles organization as the number 2 hitter in terms of home runs in Aberdeen's lineup. He has 9 this year, which is just 3 behind Creed Willems for the team lead. And with his surge over the last 2 months, he has gotten his OPS on the year up to 745, as I mentioned, after a really cold start. Etzel, meanwhile, has been one of the quicker risers in the Orioles system during a season where we have not seen a lot of promotions. He began this year in Aberdeen and was hitting .307 with an .857 OPS through 51 games where he was promoted to Bowie. The numbers have come down a little bit since the move up to AA, but he's still been pretty solid. A .261 average was a .730 OPS, and as well as 8 extra base hits in 32 games. His power did come down a little bit when he made the move up from Aberdeen to Bowie. And that has been kind of the question mark with Etzel is he going to hit for enough power to break through as a regular? Because there's a lot of other things that he does well. Runs well, plays pretty good defense, can hit for contact. So he went from being a guy in the 10th round last year who was not getting a lot of attention nationally to kind of being in the conversation over the course of the season with the production that he was having. Now, Bob will give you the rankings from our top 50 in a moment, but I should add as a qualifier here that the 3 of us are a little bit higher than the national consensus to this point on Etzel, whereas our rankings on Baumeister and Horvath kind of are in line with what you will see elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's right. And let's see, Baumeister in our last update that we did at the beginning of this month, Baumeister was tied for 12th with Luis De Leon. Mac Horvath was number 14, and Matthew Etzel was number 17. So we lose 3 guys between 12 and 17 in this trade. I'd like to just go through each guy and kind of give like a devil's advocate plus and minus for each. I mean, Baumeister, The stuff was looking really good. A lot of strikeouts, a lot of walks, but really liked the way he was developing, and probably would have been at Double-A if not for the depth of pitching that is already logjam there. But at the same time, the walks are there, and he's got a ways to go, I would say. I don't think he's like particularly going to race to the major leagues, so I don't think that hurts you too much in that regard. Horvath, obviously slow start, has been much better of late, but still a lot of swing and miss questions to his game, and he's in high A. Etzel, basically like a poor man's Enrique Bradfield that you got in the 10th round last year. Awesome story. But yeah, the power is a question, and obviously being a poor man's version of someone means you're not quite as good at things. Can steal bases, not as well as Bradfield. Can play good defense, not as good as Bradfield. So yeah, those are my quick takeaways there as what we're giving up. And already this next update for the beginning of August is going to be very interesting between the draft guys coming in, Kjerstad and maybe Povich graduating, plus trading away these three guys and maybe more to come.
I should go back to Eflin for a moment because there's a key detail I forgot to mention, which is his contract status. Although I did note that he signed a 3-year deal before the 2022 season. By acquiring him now, the Orioles will have Eflin for the next year and a half. He is owed $18 million next season as part of this contract. What we don't know yet, and what I suspect will be reported by the time this goes out on our main feed, is how the two teams are going to work out the money equation of this. Given the prospects that the Orioles were giving up in the deal, I would have to think that the Rays are keeping on at least a decent chunk of Eflin's salary next year. But still, this does solve another issue, which is how are you going to handle the rotation in 2025 with Corbin Burns likely out, and then John Means, Tyler Wells, and Kyle Braddis all recovering from injury, not to mention that Means' contract is up at the end of this season as well, so it's not a guarantee he'll even be in the organization.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think it's why you haven't seen the Orioles linked to the half-a-year rentals as much as guys like we've talked about Eric Fede, who has a reasonable contract available for next season. Jamison Tyan under contract for 2 more years after the season. Obviously, Screwball and Crochet under team control for multiple years. So makes a lot of sense because there are a lot of questions going into 2025. Obviously, the main thing you want to do right now is just improve for 2024, but you have to keep an eye forward at the same time. So, yeah, you can at least go into this offseason or next season. We have Grayson Rodriguez. We have Zack Eflin now. We have Dean Kramer. And then a bunch of question marks between Povich, McDermott, Irvin, Suarez. I think it doesn't hurt to have another guy tied down for next year, and hopefully they can re-sign Burns, even though I think it is a long shot at this point. We'll see what ownership does. But yeah, it's a good point.
Something else I'm just going to throw out here real quick, because we know that one of the things the Orioles are facing is a looming roster crunch with more pitchers eligible for the Rule 5 draft this coming off season than they have 40-man roster spots for. That is not the case for Baumeister or any of the players in this deal because they were just drafted last year. So the Orioles don't really alleviate that in this deal. But outside of Brandon Young, I don't think they could have offered a pitcher to the Rays that would have moved the needle on this trade. Not to mention that while I haven't taken a dive into the Rays 40-man roster situation yet, they're a team that every offseason find themselves in the exact same spot that the Orioles are going to be in this year. So they probably would not want to add to that headache if they indeed have that issue coming up this offseason.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me because the Rays are always the team that trades decent prospects that are due to be put on a 40-man. So, yeah, if we're going to do that, I would think it would be with a team that's not located in Tampa Bay. We'll be curious to see. We also saw Seattle Mariners traded for Randy Arozarena in the past 24 hours and apparently are still looking for some offensive help, which they desperately need. Orioles have some veterans that could help them. Ramon Arias, Ryan Mountcastle, Cedric Mullins, depending on the severity of Julio Rodriguez's injury. So I'm keeping an eye on that as far as the next 4 or 5 days as we lead up to the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place for us to kind of wrap up. The Orioles are 4 days away from the trade deadline, and what we have seen today alone with the deals with the Phillies and the Rays is that everything is on the table. Veterans at the major league level could be moved. Prospects, including some that we know this organization values pretty highly, and some that have not been in the system very long, are on the table. Pretty much everything is up there for grabs right now within reason. And Bob, with that in mind, I think we would both agree that the Orioles aren't finished yet. So how do you see the next few days playing out?
It's a great point. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be finished until 6:01 or 6:15, whenever they stop announcing trades. Is it Tuesday? Tuesday at 6 p.m. Yeah, I don't think we're done. I think there's at least one more pitcher coming, maybe multiple, maybe even some offensive help if they can shift things around. I don't know, but all I know is it's going to be nerve-wracking, it's going to be exciting, and we're not going to have much smoke leading up to when the fire just burst out and everyone is talking about what just happened. So, yeah, it should be fun, and hopefully there's more to come, and it helps the team get to the World Series this year.
Certainly what we're all hoping for. And as the Orioles kind of close out a month of July that has been a bit of a roller coaster in terms of wins and losses, it's good to see them adding some reinforcements. And certainly we could see more in the coming days. And who knows? One, two, or all three of us may be back on the air before our main show Monday night if something else does happen. In the meantime, though, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, head on over to our Patreon community and sign up as a paying member for as little as $3 a month. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Eflin. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
Hear that? That's what cooked when you order juicy beef sounds like. The steaming hug of 2 slices of melted cheese, the crunch of tangy pickles and sliced onions, all topped with a toasted sesame seed bun. That's the sound of a Quarter Pounder with cheese.
Fresh beef at participating U.S. McDonald's. Excludes Alaska, Hawaii, and U.S. territories.
Wherever the road may take you, Discount Tire and Continental Tire get you there safely with the perfect combination of style, comfort, and price. Get a set of Continental tires at your local Discount Tire store or online at discounttire.com. Discount Tire, let's get you taken care of.
Fresh Step knows you'd do anything for your cat. From getting them food that's nicer than yours to letting them take a midday nap on your keyboard. So why settle for basic litter? Switch to Fresh Step. Fresh Step cat litter locks in liquid and odor on contact, giving you up to 15 days of odor control. Learn more at freshstep.com. Step it up to Fresh Step with superior odor control. Versus leading value clumping litter, Fresh Step is a registered trademark of the Clorox Pet Products Company. Febreze is used under license from the Procter & Gamble Company or its affiliates.
Watch Team USA during the Olympic Games with Xfinity Mobile. Stream every record-breaking moment with fast Wi-Fi on the go. Get the fastest connection to Paris with Xfinity, proud partner of Team USA. Learn more at Xfinity.com/Team USA.
Restrictions apply. Available in select areas. Xfinity Mobile requires Xfinity Internet.
School is back, and Dick's Sporting Goods has what you need to win your year. Shop the hottest styles from the best brands like Nike, Jordan, FP Movement, Adidas, and Stanley. Stop by your local store or visit Dicks.com for fast shipping. Now you're ready to win your year.